Let's start working with the standard user interface objects that iOS supplies us. We're going to be looking for the objects down in here in the object library. And the first object we'll work with is the label. We've seen the label a little bit, but now let's take a little bit more of a detailed look at the attributes that we can use. So again, I'll drag my label into my storyboard. I'll widen it out a little bit and make it a little taller. And of course, the first thing I can do is change what the label says. So we'll type in the text, does this label word wrap? And the answer is, at this point, no, it doesn't. So let's take a look at that behavior really quickly. There's an attribute called line breaks. And this will determine what happens if the label text doesn't fit within the label area. So right now it's truncate tail. And you can see that we have the ellipses after the text to fill up the label area. We can also truncate the middle. You can see the ellipses goes to the middle. And truncate the head. And ellipses goes to the beginning of the label. And that's all fine and dandy, but not really what we want to do. We can also clip the text, so there's no ellipses, the text is just totally clipped off. And then we get into the wrapping behavior. We can character wrap it, but nothing happened. And the reason is, our label also has an attribute for the number of lines. And by default, that count is 1, so only do 1 line. So let's bump that up to 2. And you can see now that I have a couple of lines, and the wrapping happened within a word. And that's what character wrapping does. If I want a word wrap, the wrapping will happen on a space, so I'll get complete words. You can also see that I still don't have all of my text. So I'll bump up my line count a little bit. And there we go. So that's the behavior of the label word wrapping. You can also see that I type poorly and can't spell. Let me fix that just to make things proper. Much better. Okay. So let's take a look at some of the other attributes. We have a color attribute. And if we click on the arrows, we get standard colors. For instance, the dark gray. And you can hardly see that that actually changed. A light gray, which again, actually see that that one changed. Light text color, which is very light in this case. And recently used. More importantly, we have other. And now we get a spectrum. And we can work with this. And as you can see, as I go through the spectrum, the color of the label changes. We'll just go for green for now. And we can, of course, close this dialog. We also have a font. And I can simply increase the font by working with the arrows. I can also change the font type by clicking on the T icon. And we'll make it an italic. I can also make it bold. But I cannot make it bold and italic. So that's an either or for you. We also have alignment, of course, and we're left aligned by default. And we can center it, right align, full justification, which doesn't do much in this case. This would be more likely used if you have a paragraph. So we'll center that. We can also look at the auto shrink property, which can adjust the font size depending upon the label size. Now we're not going to see a lot because we actually have enough lines. But now you can see that when I reduce the number of lines, the font size actually shrinks. If I fix the font size, then we get into our wrapping and clip behavior. And I can also scale that. I can also tighten the letter spacing, which probably isn't going to help a lot in this case. Yeah, you can see that not much of anything happened right now. But if you're just a little bit off, you can use that. We also have an attribute for shadow, which I wouldn't advise using a lot, but you might want to use it to accent every so often. So we can have a shadow color. We'll make a dark gray. And you can see very subtly that there's a gray shadow there. But we also have shadow offsets. So I have a horizontal offset. And you can see the gray offset to that. I also have a vertical offset. So you can see I can now actually almost double up on this font. That's pretty unreadable, but it gives you the idea of how to work with the shadow. So these are the most basic attributes that you'll probably use with a label. Now, one other thing we want to do is we actually want to create a connection for our label so that we can work with it in code. So we'll go to the Connections Inspector. And we'll also change our view to show the Assistant Editor. And this will show our storyboard and our view controller code. And I can select the label. And I'm going to create a referencing outlet for that label. This will effectively create a variable in my view controller. And I just click the plus sign, drag myself over into the view controller, and it will insert the outlet. And we give the outlet a name. This is basically going to be the variable name for this label. And I will cleverly name it label. And you'll note that it's a type of UI label. We don't have any other choices for this particular object. When I click connect, I get the outlet in code. So now I have a user interface design done in the storyboard, and I have a variable in code that I can work with. And we'll take a look at working with it in code in the next lesson.